Those resources are so small, that window, and to be able to say, hey, I have it all for you right here, it's incredible as an outreach worker to see that relief of the ease that comes to people by coming into this building. And I think that's so important that people in our community know that there are people that care, and they're here in this building.
And it's amazing that right now you're out there helping the most vulnerable people who are in the darkest pit of their lives, and you're bringing them here to help change their lives. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
They've been caring for you your whole life. Now it's your turn to care for them. Family caregiving involves spouses, children, parents, neighbors, and others. In Pierce County, the Family Caregiver Support Program helps hundreds of families cope with the day-to-day tasks of providing care. When your role changes, we are here to help.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the Economic and Infrastructure Development Committee for May 13th, 2025, times 9:32. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, good morning. Councilmember Dunson.
Here.
Councilmember Yombe.
Excused.
Councilmember Herrera.
Excused.
Councilmember Ayala.
Here.
And Councilmember Morrell.
Here.
You have 3 members present.
3 members present, and according to my math, that is a quorum. So before you is the agenda for today. Are there any concerns, questions? Not seeing any. The agenda will stand as presented. Approval of the minutes from April 22nd, 2025. Hopefully you've had a chance to review them, and there are no corrections. Not seeing any, we will accept the minutes of April 22nd, 2025 as presented. Also joining us today is Council Member Kruger. So thank you for coming to committee. Okay, today seems to be presentation day. So we are all looking forward to the presentations today. We'll start with item number 5, which is the 2024 Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, or the LTAC, and the Tourism Promotion Area Hotel Commission, the TPAC. So I will let Erica Red Hunt, or
Yes, thank you very much.
do the introduction.
Thank you very much. So this report is provided to the committee annually, and it's taking a look back at the 2024 program for the LTAC and the TPAC. So with that brief introduction, I will present you with Betty Boblitz, our Economic Development Director.
And her sidekick, Mike.
Good morning, Chair Morrell and council members. Thank you very much for having us here today. I'm Betty Boblitz, Director of Economic Development. It's hard to change names, but there we go. You can call me anything you want. But it's a pleasure. Usually you hear us on jobs. We talk a lot about jobs, and you hear those reports. But the other 2 areas that you're going to hear about today are big areas of economic development. So you're going to hear the tourism update, and these are all, for some reason, we come to you in May, but these are year-end. So you're going to see 2024 information. So we'll start with our tourism program with Mike Gomi, and he'll do LTAC and TPA updates.
Thank Betty. Hello, Mike.
Hello.
And just for the record, committee member Yombe has chosen to join us this morning, so we appreciate you gracing the place with your presence. Thank you, Mike. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Morrell and committee members. My name is indeed Mike Omi, and as part of my role in economic development, I help to manage the 2 tourism grant fund programs and their associated committees. One's a commission, one's a committee. And those are, of course, lodging tax, the lodging tax program, and the tourism promotion area program, referred to as LTAC and TPA. And as Betty mentioned, recap of 2024, even though we're well into 2025. So I'm going to be referring to the report. I hope you have it in front of you as well, because writing's a bit small on the screen there. But on that first page of the report, this is our annual year-end 2024 report. On the first page, you'll see, or back up to that first page, you'll see the incredible array of people who make up both the Lodging Advisory Committee and the Tourism Promotion Area Commission. For LTAC, Councilmember Kruger is continuing as the chair of the committee. And the committee is made up of both lodging operators and tourism professionals, with a couple of at-large positions thrown in for good measure as well. For the TPA, all of the voting members are hoteliers, by statute, and they're basically representatives from each of the cities and the unincorporated county that pay into the TPA. But we also have up to four ex officio seats for city staff positions, typically from the cities that pay into the TPA, primarily for transparency. So let's go to the next page. So we're talking about lodging tax first, or what people typically call LTAC. When you hear LTAC, it actually refers to the committee, Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, but everyone just calls the whole thing LTAC. So, that's how I refer to it as well. There are similarities between the lodging tax and the TPA, similarities and some differences, such as the source of the funds, how the funds can be used, and the makeup of the committees, as I just mentioned. For lodging tax, LTAC, the funds come from additional taxes that are levied on lodging stays. And I say lodging, not hotel stays, because even bed and breakfasts, even short-term rentals and such pay into the lodging tax fund. I think the background section in your packets talks about a 7% excise tax. It's probably more accurate to say up to 7% excise tax, as it depends on the size of the hotel and the jurisdiction that you're in, that the hotel is in, as far as what the amount is. There are some at 4%. And 2% is a rebate on the regular sales tax. So the patrons don't even see that initial 2%. So they're seeing either a 2% or a 5% increase on their lodging bill. Also, there are, this gets a little bit convoluted, and apologize, I'm available for questions. But there are 5 larger cities in Pierce County that do not pay into the county's lodging tax program. That's Tacoma, Lakewood, Fife, Puyallup, in Gig Harbor. But we have a funding partnership with around 16 of the smaller cities and towns, and JBLM. Where they keep some of the funding for themselves, but also pay into the county system. It can definitely get confusing, but that's one of the reasons for my position, is to kind of keep it all sorted out. So for lodging tax, funds can be used for tourism marketing, of course, but also for operations of events. And in some cases, capital expenditures of tourism-related assets. Those two last ones are unique to lodging tax. And it's typically municipalities that are involved with the asset development type projects. And as I already mentioned, the committee members are a mix of hoteliers and tourism professionals. On the bottom half of the page there, you'll see a summary of what was funded from lodging tax in 2024. And as has been typical, we had a really nice blend of things that were funded in 2024, from helping to rebuild the Chambers Bay Golf Turn Stand, to continuing Sumner downtown improvements, to the Chambers Creek Regional Park event lawn enhancements, and a feasibility study to determine the impact of adding cycling events and competitions in and around Ashford. And those are in addition to our typical annual efforts of developing new amateur sporting events, leisure events, and general leisure travel marketing, like itinerary tours or stay and play golf packages, Mount Rainier Scenic Railroad, and rail cycle offerings. And as I mentioned, we have a lodging tax partnership and funding collaboration, essentially, with over 16 cities and towns throughout the county. And the resulting array of grant recipients then helps to ensure tourism promotion throughout the entire county and across several different categories of tourism as well, making sure that we're remaining thorough and well-rounded in our efforts, something that came out of a strategic planning process a few years back. So if we turn the page, We're now switching gears to TPA, Tourism Promotion Area. Again, similarities and differences between the two funds. For the TPA, the funds come from flat fees that are levied per night at hotels that have 40 or more rooms, and only in certain cities, just to make it complicated. I think your background information left out Lakewood, whose hotels charge $1 per night, similar to Puyallup. Tacoma's at $1.50. We've got a couple at $1. That's Puyallup and Lakewood, and then the rest at 50 cents. There are 7 cities and the unincorporated county that participate in the TPA. And funds can only be used for tourism marketing. No event operations, no asset development like in LTAC. It's only tourism marketing. And the voting committee members must be hoteliers, as I said. And as a point of clarification, there is only one TPA in the county, but there are multiple LTACs because quite a few of the cities have their own. The 5 that I mentioned that don't pay into the county, but even some of the smaller cities that we're partnering with have their own lodging tax system. They keep some of their funds and pay into the county as well. So part of my job is kind of keeping all that stuff straight. And you'll see the summary for the TPA. You'll see the summary of what the TPA program funded in 2024. Also a really nice array of programs that focused on conventions and meetings, countywide events promotion, itinerary-based campaigns for leisure travel, and 40 or so college-age and amateur sporting events. The TPA was designed to help support the 2 organizations that had a year-round and countywide tourism promotion effort. And that was the CVB and the Sports Commission. And I'm using old terms, but some of you remember those terms. In Pierce County, those 2 organizations combined in 2019, and that organization is called Tacoma Pierce County Tourism Authority now, or Visit Tacoma Pierce County, a marketing name. Next page, Jeff. So finally, the report highlights the incredible results that we had in 2024, even in the face of travel and tourism plateauing a bit in 2024, especially towards the end of the year. And I'm particularly pleased with the ROI that we achieved on our funded programs. We returned back $6 for every $1 that we spent on the grant programs. And remember, when I say spent, those dollars come from visitors in the first place and not from taxing our citizens. So the investment part of that ROI is even better and certainly less painful. And that ROI was achieved even with including overhead in that, and programs that aren't yet producing room nights. Like asset development projects that taken years in development and even a couple more for stabilization. So really great results and proud of those results. And there they are enlarged for your ease of reading. We supported 68 plus programs and events in 2024. There were about 60 in 2023. We generated over 290,000 room nights through these programs. There were about 180,000 in 2023, and created over $36 million in direct revenue to our tourism partners. It was about $22 million the previous year. So great results. The programs are definitely working as intended, and we're hoping things calm down a little bit this year to give us a chance at having some of those types of results again by the end of this year. And that wraps it up. Thank you very much.
Okay, are there any questions? Committee Member Denson.
Thank you, Chair. These are really great programs, and thank you for your good work. Really, really, really exciting benefits for everybody. I had a question about, I guess, LTAC. I see that the entities that received grants in 2024, were there quite a few entities that applied and did not receive grants?
In 2024, there was only one entity that applied, and the voting was such that it didn't get recommended to council.
Okay, well, I guess that's not too bad.
And it's very uncommon. It's very uncommon to have that occur. We're able to work with 99.9% of the organizations or individuals that apply for it. Yeah.
And what was the total amount of grants given in 2024 through LTAC?
Through LTAC, total amount, I do have that somewhere here. For 2024, for LTAC, we were just north of $5 million in total, and the asset development projects add up quickly.
Yeah.
So that that's one of the reasons why it's a higher number like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for those questions. Committee member Ayala.
Thank you so.
Got it?
Yes, got it.
Control here.
Thanks so much, Chair. And thank you so much for the presentation. I had 2 questions.
Yes.
The first, you talked about LTAC having some cities exempt from that. I'm curious if the at-large positions, I'm saying there's 2, are there any restrictions to the at-large positions?
Yeah, not heavy restrictions. We're expecting and anticipating that there would be some tourism-related background, with the person, interest, of that sort. But I'm trying to recall the application and the list of requirements, and I'm not thinking of any heavy restrictions. The restrictions are really more for the regular positions where they have to be a hotelier or they have to be an eligible recipient of the fund. At large is a little more open.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then here, I know this is about 2024, so if you don't have an answer, yes, if you don't have an answer, that is completely okay. But in terms of trends, I'm curious, we now are at Q1 of 25.
Yeah.
I'm curious around how 24 and 25 Q1s are comparing.
Yeah. We saw in sort of the end of 2024, we definitely saw sort of travel and tourism plateauing. And that has continued, and then you add in, some of the unknowns of 2025, and, we're seeing, we're definitely seeing some impact from that in the first quarter. One of the biggest impacts is international travel. We don't get a lot of that directly, but sort of whatever happens in Seattle sort of happens to us, in some cases in a lesser way, but it still happens to us because we are certainly connected and close enough. So that's a big one. That international travel is down. Generally speaking, people are in a wait and see mindset with regard to travel, whereas the rates at these lodging facilities was helping, especially through early 2024. It was helping to make up for some declining occupancy demand. The increases there have started to wane a bit as well, and so we're not able to rely on that as much either right now. Lodging tax fund is still healthy. We're keeping an eye on the TPA fund because that is derived entirely from demand, whereas lodging tax adds in the rate as well to kind of come to the total that we receive from that fund.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you for those questions. Would the chair of the LTAC Councilmember Crewer like to make some comments?
It's just that I work with the best team ever.
All right. Hope that includes me. Hey.
Here's your opportunity.
Of course it does. Very creative. It's just one of the most pleasurable committees, and nobody gets it. Not changing.
We work with a lot of great partners. I mean,
We
they're
do, and good ideas, and
Yeah.
these are the kind of things that we need more of because they bring money in.
Yes, indeed.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for those comments. Also, Committee Member Herrera has finally joined us. So,
With a
thank
huge
you.
list of questions, I'm sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
I'm not going to let you off the hook easy on this.
If they get too hard, I just point to Betty. So,
Okay.
Betty Baldwin.
Okay. I know the Tacoma area, mainly the Tacoma Dome, has a lot of concerts.
Yes.
Are you tracking hotel nights that are based on overnight stays on events like concerts?
Yes, indeed. That is more of a TPA program. Because Tacoma doesn't pay into the county lodging tax program, but they certainly do pay into the TPA. And so, yes, we are tracking that. I don't have those numbers with me today, but the venues and events, that Tacoma looks after, Convention Center, Tacoma Dome, the theaters, Sheeny, they're huge. I mean, they are huge components of the total TPA program and the overnights that are generated. And not only for Tacoma, but you'll find that there's compression there. When we have a big night at the Convention Center or Tacoma Dome, rooms are moving out into the other parts of the county and other cities. So it's a huge asset.
Okay. Obviously, working with, do you work at all with the Puyallup tribe pertaining to their venues and their events?
Not directly, because they do not pay into either of the funds. Indirectly, in that they are often beneficiaries of our efforts. I think there isn't a significant relationship there, but relationship that exists is positive because they see that. They see the benefit of, and when we've exhausted our the lodging facilities that pay into these programs, their hotel is another option for us to, for the team that does convention sales, for instance, to get a big convention in that needs more rooms.
Yeah, it seems like that would be a nice option to be inclusive as far as promoting each other.
Absolutely, yes. And they're very well aware of when that happens. Yep.
Okay. The other question that I had was pertaining to, you mentioned overhead cost.
Yeah.
How much of your budget is overhead? You can get back to me later.
Yeah, I don't have a percentage standpoint or percentage figure. It is rather low, especially for LTAC. The percentage, that we're sort of carving out for the overhead. It's salaries, my salary, half for each program. We have some of the county fees, like administrative fees in there. And then we set aside a small amount each year as well for research and tools. Just making sure that we have data and good data to help our recipients and our potential recipients make good decisions on how they're marketing, who they're marketing to, that kind of thing. So we try to keep that. We try to keep those carve-outs to a minimum and get as much money out to recipients as possible.
Okay, so what you're telling me is you run a lean, mean machine.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, my last question pertains to a follow-up on Vice Chair Ayala's question. Do you track length of stays for rooms that are booked for more than one night?
Yeah, what we ask our partners. So one of the things that came out of that strategic planning process a few years ago was much more of a focus on the ROI, the room night ROI, and so we're asking our partners to be as accurate as possible in the number of room nights that are generated from their program or event. So they are required to have a way to determine that. They either do it, sort of manually by working directly with hotels, or with some of our larger partners using some of the latest technology to determine that. So we typically get total number of room nights when we're gathering our data. We would have to go back to the partners to say, well, how many of those were 2 nights and how many were 1 night, for per party. We're not asking for that level of detail, just total number of room nights, but it exists.
It for me, it would just be interesting to know if they stay more than one night,
yeah.
They stay multiple nights, then they're touring the area.
Yes.
I mean, they're out looking for activities
Absolutely.
beyond the George Thorogood concert that they just
Right.
went to last night.
Yeah.
So, that would be of interest to me to know, are we drawing people, families to the area, and are they engaging in activities while they're here, and what are those activities? And
It's certainly a goal. I mean, to extend people's stay is a primary goal of every applicant. It's spelled out in the application and expectations that, do what you can to do that. Make it a 2-day festival rather than one, encouraging people to stay over in the first place. And then once they're here, extending their stay. So a lot of our leisure travel itinerary-based programs do just that. They set up 5-6 day itineraries to really try to encourage that and to move people throughout the county so that we're not just hitting the higher profile, overused tourism assets.
Okay, thank you. Okay, are there any further questions of committee members? Not seeing any. Appreciate the presentation from both
Pleasure.
Betty and Mike. And we will move on to number 6, which is the 2024 Arts Program Report. Ms. Erica Red Hunt, are you going to do the introduction on this one?
Absolutely. So again, this report is going to be a summary of the activities of the arts program in 2024. The Pierce County provides several programs that make grant funding available to local artists and directly purchase pieces of art. So council has supported this through several budget provisions in the past, and so here to talk about that is Betty Boblitz, and she will introduce the speaker as well.
Once again, I'm Betty Boblitz, Director of Economic Development. And just on Mike's comment in his presentation, they do use a lot of tools and data, and one of them is an ROI calculator. And every grant that gets awarded, they turn data in, so every one of those programs has an ROI calculator associated with it. And it is impressive. He rolled up all those numbers for you, but it's a pretty aggressive grant process that they go through, both from the beginning and also to the end, to make sure we have those numbers. So now we get to talk about the arts program. And actually, we've had a part-time arts program for years and years and years, and council a few years ago really said, hey, let's move up and make this full-time. So I think you will see with your next presentation from Carrie Wren, our Economic Development's Arts Specialist, how we have really stepped up in the arts arena in a big way. And hopefully, as you drive throughout our community, you get to see it. And so now Carrie's going to give you a recap of 2024, and she'll be able to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you so much, Betty. Council, I am so excited and honored to be here today. I see a lot of familiar faces, and I'm happy to meet some new ones. As Betty said, my name is Carrie Wren, and I work with the Pierce County Arts Commission, and I'm also really excited to share that we currently have 9 positions on that commission, and they are all full. So our commission is made up with 7 members, 1 from each district, and then 2 at-large positions. And we're really excited to have a nice, broad coalition of members who bring a lot of experience and expertise to our programs. To start with an overview, so I'm going to, next slide. So today I'm going to cover essentially our 1% for the arts and then our general arts programming. Our 1% for the Arts Fund has been established to really make a lasting legacy of publicly held artwork that is accessible to all. Not everyone goes to museums, not everyone goes to art galleries, but most of them do have to go get a driver's license at some point. So we try to put art in public spaces and bring this opportunity to all of our residents. In 2024, we did at the Sprinker Recreation Center, as you all know, I'm sure there was a lot of wonderful upgrades that happened at that facility, and one of them was a fitness court, and we were able to work with the National Fitness Court campaign and a local artist to create artwork that is on that piece of equipment, and it is really wonderfully representative of the community. It does say Parkland and Spanaway. It has history. It has current reflections of that community. It's really a wonderful piece to have there as in the center of the Sprinker renovations. The other thing that we have done is the Election Center mural RFP has gone out. So I'm going to try not to give too much away. I know I'm only supposed to talk about 2024, but I'm really excited in the direction this is going. It is a 2,200 square foot mural on the exterior of the Pierce County Election Center. And I think it will be an incredible addition to the community there. Yeah, all I can tell you is I'm really excited. The selected finalists received a $1,000 stipend for their design and budget. And, we do this to really make sure that we're giving back, that we're supporting appropriately the community that we're supposed to be serving. Next slide, please. So with our General Arts Fund, hopefully you are all very familiar with the traffic signal box art wraps. I have to say, I get more positive feedback from the community on this than I ever could have imagined. I've been out just measuring utility boxes and had people roll down the window and be like, thank you. Like, I don't even know how you know what I'm doing, but you're right. They're like, thanks for the artwork. I'm like, I don't know how you know that's what I'm doing, but you're right. So in 2024, we completed an additional 33. And it's all local artists, so you have to live in Pierce County in order to apply. And what you will see as you drive through the county is that in each district, there is artwork from an artist from that district. And artists receive $500 for each box design that's selected. So again, really trying to grow and support the arts community here locally. We do have an amazing website. I highly encourage you to visit it. It's the piercecountywa.gov/arts. We have a map of where you can find all of the completed boxes. We have information about the artists, and there's a full gallery of all the artwork that you can find all throughout the community. You can go and make yourself, a nice tour for the day, or if you're going to go someplace new, maybe check out where you can see local artists. And let's see, so our annual art grant program. This is a really wonderful program in a way that we work and partner with a lot of people, nonprofits throughout Pierce County. In 2024, we had $22,000 in grants that helped to create over 30,000 hours of instruction in arts experiences for Pierce County residents. So we had 5 partners on 7 projects, and that supported all of that impact in our community. So we're really proud of that. One of the things that we've also done is that now that we have a position here at the county, I go out and do site visits with each of our grant partners, look at their programs, see what they're doing, and I bring that report back to the commission. And it really has helped to develop and understand ways to work within our community and how to grow those relationships. And we have really seen that in these past years. Next slide. So the Puget Sound Educational School District holds an annual art show, and our commission helped to judge the Pierce County applicants to that, and we give a few awards or recognize a few students. So the Pierce County Executive Award went to Kai Tower for Overstimulated, and the Pierce County Arts Commission Award went to Jocelyn Castoreno Figuaro. And you can see a pencil drawing and some clay works, but some just really wonderfully talented artists that are being fostered through our school district here. As Betty mentioned, we have been able to do a lot more now that we have somebody here in the arts and really dedicated to promoting and doing these things. So some of the things that we've been able to accomplish in 2024, our annual grant online application was streamlined. So when I first began here, this was a paper process. People had to download a PDF, either fill it out and email it to us or send it to us in the mail. And this process is now all online, and we've streamlined the whole process. Am I getting ahead of myself? 24 and 25. But we did streamline that whole process online. We have made additional improvements to that process this year as well. We always provide surveys for our partners so that we can get feedback as well. We want them to provide their, survey results and their ROI, and we hold ourselves to the same standards. So that being said, we do have a feedback opportunity. We had 60% of our participants in that art grant program that filled out our survey. 100% of the survey respondents agree that grant funds were impactful. They had access to the tools required to be successful. So the other thing that we do as part of this process is when applicants are, when we open up the process for applications, we now have an educational webinar that happens to really try to give people all the tools they need to be successful in that application process. And there's a Q&A section at the end. We record this for those who are not able to attend at that time, and it's available on the website. So we have a comprehensive website that has great instructions, is available in multiple languages. We also have that webinar. If people go through this process and they are not funded, they have an opportunity to have a one-on-one with me going over their application, trying to figure out what we can do to make them stronger applicants in the future. We do also offer that beforehand. So there's a deadline in the beginning. So if people put in grant applications by that deadline, then they have a chance to meet one-on-one with me. We can go over before they apply and figure out, are there things that might make their application stronger? Are there ways that we can help each other? Let's see. So yeah, really having the educational components added. After people are funded, we also have another webinar to walk them through what that grant process is going to be like, make sure they're informed. We have tools on our website, make sure that they know what those are, where those are, and how they can access and utilize them. And trying to think if I missed anything. There's so much I want to share, but we did have double the annual eligible grant applicants. We were very, very clear and really changed the wording in the application process to make sure that the people who were applying were actually eligible. Because what we were finding is, yes, we had a lot of applicants, but a lot of them were not actually eligible. They were not going through that eligibility section close enough. We don't want to waste their time. Their time is precious resource for nonprofits. So we made sure that that grant application was very, very clear, very, very outlined so that they could be successful and we didn't waste anyone's time. And I think that's kind of the long and short of it as far as what I have for you here today. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions of committee members? Committee member Yombe.
Thank you, Carrie, for that presentation, and I can tell that you're very enthusiastic about it, which is helpful. So, first of all, I'm honing in on, so the annual art grant program, it says that its mission is to try to get grants in underserved areas of the county. How do we ensure that we are doing that, making sure that, you're getting it out to those areas in geographic equity and things like that?
Yeah, certainly. We do that in a couple of ways. It's simply a question on our application as, help us understand how you are specifically reaching an underserved community. So it's something that we ask up front. It is part of the rubric and part of the scoring to see if they have demonstrated that to us. And then the other thing that we do is we also map out, it's something that we provide for the commissioners when they're getting ready to make a decision, is that each grant is mapped out where this is taking place to kind of make sure that we are reaching some of those areas where we know that there are not great services. But so it's kind of a three-pronged approach in asking up front for that information from the applicants, making sure that the grant applications are evaluated on those measures, and then looking physically through the county to see where those events are happening.
So along that line, on the community partners, do you tend to get a lot of new and, make sure that that list kind of rotates as opposed to, like some grants, at the county and some other institutions, what happens is that, the ones who frequent and apply, they kind of depend on, they depend on some of the grants and programs that we have.
Yeah.
And then it sometimes creates this unintentional thing where, the newer applicants or different applicants who are coming in who don't navigate this regularly have to compete with people who are, much better at doing this. Mm-hmm. How do we address that?
I think that we have a mix. So we do have some people that that we have funded that have amazing and very impactful programs. We have seen them over time just have such an incredible impact in the community. But we also have, now that we have a position and a sounding voice for outreach, we do also have a large mix of new applicants as well. And again, trying to make sure that that field is as level as possible by giving people tools up front, like the one-on-one opportunity, like the webinar opportunity, and things in different languages, so that we're making sure that we're making that playing field as level and equitable as possible. So I think right now it's a it's a good mix of making sure that we're reaching out, we're supporting new programs, and then sometimes we fund established programs or established organizations that we know are reaching out and funding new initiatives that we know simply rely on the funds that they receive from us to reach out into unserved areas that don't have services otherwise.
Okay. And one final question for the moment. How many times does the Arts Commission meet? Because I'm looking at all the things that you've accomplished in a year, and I'm seeing, how many hours of instruction, for example, that have gone into some of these projects. How many times do they meet?
The commission meets 4 times annually.
Wow.
I work much more than that.
Okay. Okay. All right.
But at their direction and with their support.
Because I'm just thinking about just the utility wraps alone, and I'm thinking about how many hours somebody must go over trying to determine which ones to select. So.
Yeah, our commission does the selection of all of the artwork. We received in our last round, I think like 240 pieces of artwork. So it was certainly a heavy lift for them to go through all of those, but I think they did a great job.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks a lot.
Yeah, certainly.
Thank you for those questions. Committee Member Ayala. Vice Chair Ayala.
Are you sure? Thank you, Chair. I do have to say, as a former arts commissioner, I have to hold back a little bit, so please forgive me there. I have a couple of questions. The first, how do artists know about these opportunities? Like, can you talk a little bit about maybe your top 2 or 3 ways that artists find out about this?
Oh gosh, just that many? We try a lot of different avenues. So, things like listservs throughout the community. We do a lot with social media, but then we try to do a lot of direct outreach as well. Something that we've added to our website is that people can go up and right on the main landing page, you can sign up for artist opportunity notifications. So we've really tried to grow our outreach. Anybody who applies gets put onto our listserv so that we can make sure that even if maybe we have or haven't selected you in the past, that you are informed about what's coming up. And we work with partners like the City of Tacoma. We work with the state, ArtsWA. I'm sorry, you asked for 2. But we try to go as broad and wide as possible. You never know where you might reach somebody, where an opportunity like this might make a huge difference in their career. So we try to go as wide as possible. Whenever possible. Of course, we do the traditional press releases. We try to talk with the press as much as they're willing to put up with us. Show the amazing things that we do. Yeah. Does that?
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
And then my second question, do we do anything for National Arts Month?
We do not currently do anything specifically for National Arts Month. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for those questions and comments. Committee Member Herrera.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for all the work you do. I think we talked about before that art is how we look into our past. The only thing that's left of long lost peoples is their art, and fight into it. So it's important work. So you talked a little bit about the traffic signal wraps, and that's you get local artists. What other programs for local artists do we have?
Well, right now, I'm like, do I talk about 24? Do I talk about 25? So some of the things that we do is, all RFPs essentially that we put out go out. Some go out widely. Some are specific to Pierce County residents. So I guess I'm just going to talk about the things that we're currently doing. So we just had an RFP out for the election center. That's in here. That was 2024. That was national, but we did a lot of specifically targeted local outreach as well. And of course, that's open to anyone eligible to work in the United States. And we just did an additional RFP that was for 3 separate projects that was the same way. So eligible, if you're eligible to work in the U.S., you are eligible to apply for this opportunity. And I think that's the biggest opportunities that we have currently. And I guess I have to be careful about my wishes and hopes for the future.
There's more than that.
Yes,
So,
I hope to offer more opportunities in the future.
and I have one other question, if I may. Does the commission organize or support any cultural art events or festivals in Pierce County?
I'm trying to think if any of our community partners have done, well, like Northwest Sinfonietta. They do a few programs for the community, not necessarily festivals. I don't think we've done any festivals. It's really kind of specific to art programming, education opportunities, but I don't think we've done any festivals to this point.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for those questions. Councilmember Gruber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just curious, if a constituent has an idea for a program, how would they go about suggesting that to the commission?
Oh, to the commission through our office.
Okay.
You know, if you want to email, if a constituent wanted to email us, that's something that we will pass along and share with the commissioners.
Okay, thank you.
Of
Thank
course.
you, Chair.
Thank you for those questions. And once again, Committee Member Yambe has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the subject is, getting everybody's creative energy is coming, so I appreciate it. So, Carrie, I was wondering, on vandalism at our art pieces, and, there's a saying sometimes that, artists don't necessarily tag other people's art and vandalize it. What are you guys seeing about that kind of thing? Do we have a lot of vandalism to our, pieces of art that we have to, do repairs and maintain?
I'm going to say this very carefully, and I'm going to knock on many, many things. But so far, to this point, we have 81 boxes, well, we actually have more than that now, that are in the community. And we have 17 pieces of public art on display all throughout the county. And so far, to this point, at this time, we have not had to do, that I'm aware of, any vandalism repairs.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's heartening to know. And just along that line, for maintenance and repair of our art pieces in our collections at the county, how do we pay for that work?
Mm-hmm. Well, most of the work that's in our collection is part of the 1% for the arts, and the 1% for the arts covers the cost of maintenance for all pieces as well. So, okay. Last year we did, and I think it actually didn't make it into the report because there was a lot, but there's a piece at the Juvenile Raymond Hall. Thank you. At Raymond Hall. And it was called The Spiral of Life. It was put up in 2000. Beautiful piece, collaborative with the residents, and it needed some love. It had tiles on the outside. About half the tiles had fallen off. There was strips of metal on the outside where the color had completely faded from a rainbow to just metal. And we used 1% art funds to, we have an obligation to be caretakers of the works in our collection. And so we worked with the artist, which was a really wonderful opportunity. And we retiled it, cleaned the glass. We redid the metal with more contemporary materials that will have a longer life. We powder coated them and used high-grade architectural powder coating, so they should last at least 30 years. Okay. So yeah, it's really important to be good stewards of the artworks in our collection.
So the 1% goes to not only salary, but the maintenance, acquisition, and all that involved?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it needs to fully encompass the collection at all stages in the process.
Okay. All right. Appreciate that.
Yeah, certainly.
Thank you for those questions. Vice Chair Ayala's got another question.
Thank you, Chair. Just a really quick one. I'm curious if you have a decommissioning policy and if that has had to be exercised in the recent past.
We've actually been working on a policy. That's one of my roles in coming into this position, was to start to figure out some of those policies. There is a kind of a rough something that was in place. But at this point, we've not had to utilize that. We really, again, try to be good stewards so that the pieces maintain in good condition. So it's something that is in process, but a little rough still at the moment. Yeah, just trying to make sure that we're taking really good care of everything so that we never have to decommission.
Great. Thank you so much.
Certainly.
Thank you for that question. Are there any further questions of any committee members? Okay, I will end discussion on this with a couple of questions. Did I see recently that you put out an RFP for some large murals? Can you kind of lead us on that one a little bit?
Certainly. The one that's in here that we talked about is the Election Center. So that's 2,200 square feet on the outside of the Election Center building. And over on 32nd, 35th, there behind Costco. And then the council also approved funding for a Pierce County mural project that specifically addresses vandalism and blight, and needed to be used in an unincorporated area that was suffering vandalism and blight. And we worked with other departments and were able to identify some sites that were really continually problematic for staff. And we're in the process of putting in, let's see, I can't remember the square footage at the moment, but I could get that all to you. But a lot of square footage of murals. I think I think it's probably around 6,000 square feet of murals that will be going in this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think there again, this will push the element of retagging when you go to these larger murals, because you're addressing areas that are graffitied constantly. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them are in District 5. You know, I there again, you know, some graffiti is definitely art. But if you ever get a chance to go on a little road trip, look at the underpass of Orville Road and Brooks Road outside of Ording, and you will see some amazing graffiti art, which is out of sight, out of mind. It's below the roadway. No one ever sees it other than if you go in there. I've always been interested in how we can engage those artists in a creative, safe environment where they could have their talents. I've noticed one that I've been impressed with. It's a shrink wrap mural event where they're able to put shrink wrap between two poles and allow the community to come in there and do their rattle can work. and it's just kind of open, and at the end of the event, they just take it down. But I thought that was a creative way to do it, not that I'm encouraging people to go out and tag structures, but there again, it's there, it happens. So I know that could you explain the grants and the funding that you get from the council, the budget, how you, because I know during when we had ARPA money, there was one of the things that the council passed, again, District 5, with then Council Member Campbell was very, at the forefront of this effort. So how are you looking at funding from here forward, 2025, 2026 budget?
I'm going to defer to Betty on this one.
Thank you for the question. To the best of my knowledge, there's no ARPA money that's put into our arts program. But I think you'll see, as Carrie noted, when you look at the annual arts grant program, that's $22,000 a year. And then you have also budgeted specifically for RAPs. So in your budget that you've done, you've budgeted for those things out of general fund resources. The 1% is a separate fund. And Carrie's salary is paid part by 1% and part by general fund.
Okay. And as far as the traffic signal wraps, what percentage do you think you're at?
I believe we still have 50 left.
We've done 80. Well, we've done just more than 81. Let's see. I think we've done 90 of 140.
Okay.
And these are just on unincorporated Pierce County owned utility boxes.
And they're traffic actuating utility boxes. Because
Yay,
we get
Letitia.
we get a lot of phone calls. I field a lot of phone calls of people who really want us to come out and wrap their utility box or, their Duke power box, or I don't know if it's Duke here, I'm used to back home, but we get a lot of phone calls to have boxes wrapped, but they are specific to traffic actuating boxes owned by Pierce County in unincorporated Pierce.
Yes, definitely a different application there. I know
And
that.
one of the things that we've done on those locations is we now have the Pierce County logo, so that if anyone wanted to know more, we thought about, do we do a QR code? No, I don't want people stopping. I don't want people pulling out their phones. So we put the Pierce County logo on all of our boxes. So all they have to do is, if you literally Google Pierce County art, you will get to information about the boxes.
Yeah, I really appreciate that because it does stand out as a Pierce County box. I know when I first came into office, one of my goals was to wrap some boxes by one of the parks up on South Hill. And it took me 4 years to get approval because they weren't Pierce County boxes.
Yeah, it is. It can be an arduous process.
Lumen boxes, CenturyLink boxes, PSD boxes, and talk about a bureaucracy. But they did get them wrapped. That was, my goal there. So I appreciate all the effort that goes into this endeavor, and it does add a little spark of lightness, beauty in an intersection. Yeah. So I do keep an eye on those, and so thank you for all you do. And I don't see any further questions, so thank you for the presentation, and we will see. We do have a committee member that is funding a lot of these programs out of his own personal council budget, so maybe Council Member Yambi can continue District 5's representation to this good effort. So.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity and for all of the insightful questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, I am going to turn this over to Vice Chair Ayala, since workforce is something that she is involved in and actually is the council's appointed person on WorkSource.
I am, yeah.
I know.
Thank
Okay,
you,
you're
Chair.
on.
Well, we do know that workforce development is economic development, and I'm really happy to be in that space. So I will actually pass this on to Ms. Erica Wright-Hunt for an introduction.
Absolutely. So Workforce Central received $800,000 in the budget for to go toward their programs for young adult paid internships and employment opportunities. And so here to talk to us about what's been going on with Workforce Central is the Chief Executive Officer of Workforce Central, Katie Conde.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for having me, Chair Morrell and council members. It's such a pleasure to be here to talk about workforce. What an incredible presentation. Thank you. I learned a ton from you. I am going to talk about the internship program that the county funds. We're sort of right in the middle of that, and so I'll share some updates. But first, I want to start with a high-level kind of state of workforce development in Pierce County, as I always do when I'm here. I won't go into too many of the weeds, though, because my hope is that each of you received our hot off the presses 2025 State of the Workforce in Pierce County report. We haven't done one of those in a couple years, and we're gonna ramp up those efforts because there's such high value in being data-driven in determining how we're all investing in workforce development. So I will cover a few of the key highlights and then talk a little bit about what we're seeing with the kind of state of workforce development looking forward, if looking forward is possible right now, and then talk a little bit about bright spots, including the internship program that you all support and fund and that we get to work with the incredible economic development team on. Next slide, please. So here you'll see our employment trends for Pierce County, and preliminary estimates for March put our labor force at just over $500,000 with an unemployment rate of 4.8%. This is tracking pretty typical with population growth and our unemployment rates across the state and country. We believe that projections forward will see some lagging effects of increase in layoffs in Q2, and so we'll certainly keep you posted with updated data on that. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we pay attention to is average annual wages in Pierce County, and while they've increased significantly, you can see in this slide that the rate of growth has not kept pace with growth nationally. And that's really tricky with the high cost of living in our area, and so we need our wages to be keeping pace with national and state trajectories, and that's not currently the case, which makes it hard to live and work in Pierce County. So that wage data is really important to us. Next slide. And when we think about inflation, we see that year-over inflation has returned to pre-pandemic levels, but again, regional increases in Pierce County have exceeded the national rate of growth for much of the past 3 years. So our inflation rate has exceeded, our wages are a bit lower, and our cost of living is higher, which can all sort of coalesce into making it difficult to live and work here. Next slide. And the last component of data that matters for kind of livability is cost of living. And because of the high regional cost of living, the relative value of $1 in Pierce County is actually lower than the national average. So this is a slide that demonstrates our purchasing power, which is kind of wage data compared with cost of living data. And you can see comparisons here with Washington and the United States. And so the purchasing power in Pierce County is about $18,000 less than the national average. Next slide. Here, this is a really important way we think about livability and quality of life in Pierce County. We talk a lot about poverty, and while the poverty level matters and is defined sort of at the federal level, We've also started focusing as a region on ALICE families, and those are asset limited, income constrained folks who are employed. So people work in 1 or 2 jobs, but who just aren't quite making enough to afford the basics living here in Pierce County. And as you all probably know, our United Way and many of our other local efforts are really focused on ALICE families and those living in poverty here in Pierce County. Next slide. This relates directly to the internship work that you all support that is such a game changer for young people in the county. So disconnected young adults. Our federal workforce system, through the funding that we receive at Workforce Central, is one of the only targeted approaches to disconnected young people. And so in Pierce County, 1 out of every 5 residents between the ages of 16 and 24 is not in employment, education, or training. This is down for all groups except for those between 16 and 24. So what this means is we have 13,000 young people in Pierce County who are not working and who are not in education. That is the core population of young people that we support through our workforce ecosystem, and that we get to support through the internship work that you all fund that is often wildly overlooked. And so I'll come back to some of the work we're doing in that space. I've got a quick, in the next slide, occupational forecast for you. This is something we look at. We also look at industry forecasts. Something really important about this slide is that these are not necessarily new jobs that are added. You see a lot of entry-level jobs here, like fast food and counter workers, retail, stockers, cashiers. A lot of this is based on turnover. So these are jobs that turn over really quickly. This does not mean that these are the fastest growing jobs in the county necessarily, but that they are the fastest growing available jobs forecasted over the next 5 years. And so when we look at that in comparison to the next slide, which is industry forecast, they don't map directly because of that. So industry forecast is really about growth. And probably not surprising, you see healthcare and social assistance, highest growing industry, highest projected new jobs added across occupations within healthcare. We also see priority sectors here for our economic development, priorities of focus in manufacturing, maritime industry, et cetera. And so here on this slide, and again, you can dig into this a lot more in the report, but are our kind of highest growing industries that are projected in Pierce County. Now, there's obviously a lot we can do when we think about investments and recruitment and retention to impact this data, and that's the work that our brilliant economic development leaders focus on every day. Next slide. Important to talk about wage gaps. I bring this up every year. They continue to exist. As of 2023, so looking back, a lot of this data is lagging just based on what's available, but the wage for men is nearly $14,000 more than for women, and obviously I think we know this gap varies by race and ethnicity. It also varies rural to urban, which is a really important distinction. It varies for military and veteran families, and there's a lot more data that we can dig into and share with you there based on your questions. Next slide. Really important to recognize a huge component of our labor force are military families. And so, just about 110,000, about 15% of Pierce County residents have some military service. Over 42,000 Pierce County insurance dependents are related to service members. And so this is a really critical population for us. I've shared this before, but we here in Pierce County established the first American Job Center on a military base in the United States that's now being modeled in different areas of the country, right here on JBLM at the Hawk Center. And it's a really critical way to work with military families and get them into our local workforce and support them in their military careers as well. So I'm going to stop there with the data, first of all, because you all have this report, but second, I want to share, based on questions that you all asked last time, a really exciting update that our data and research team has created a dashboard for each of you specific to your district with all of this data. Because last time you said, can I see what's happening in my district? And so after this presentation, I will send each of you an individual email with the link to your district dashboard so you can see everything in the state of this Pierce County workforce report specific to your area: wages, growth, industry, occupation, etc. Hoping that's a really useful tool for you all. And then the last thing I'll share about the data is, Councilmember Herrera, last year you asked about inclusion of JBLM and Puyallup tribes in this data, and I'm going to read verbatim my data and research director's response to that. Most tribal residents are currently included. However, military base residents living in barracks would not be included in the survey as they're considered group quarters. Active military members not living in group quarters are included in the total labor force, but they're excluded in the unemployment rate because that reflects civilian unemployment. So military families living on base in multi and single family housing would also be included in the data sample used to estimate the unemployment rate. So hopefully that's a little more context there with relation to those two populations. Can you go 2 ahead? Thank you. I'm going to talk a little bit about the state of workforce development. I haven't done this in the past, but I think just considering the current state of uncertainty, I'll tell you a little bit about what we're seeing here and how it's going to impact Pierce County locally. First, I'll say I'm not just sharing about Workforce Central. We consider our organization a backbone to a workforce development ecosystem, and that includes our apprenticeship programs in the region, community and technical colleges, K-12 CTE programs. So this is really an ecosystem that helps get people into quality jobs. Sure, yes, at the state and national level, funding is tricky. I don't think I have to say anything more about that, other than I'll say there are a few key things that we're paying attention to, things like Pell Grant support for students in our community and technical colleges and higher ed institutions that help support a lot of the short to medium term training into healthcare occupations, into manufacturing occupations. And so that's looking a bit wobbly at the federal level at the moment. Immigrant and refugee support is a significant portion of our population and our working population here in Pierce County. I had the pleasure of being in DC last week with Councilmember Herrera and Chair Morrell, and Chair Morrell asked a really insightful, I think, question of some of our national representatives around intentions for immigrants and refugees, recognizing they're a really critical part of our workforce. So we're watching that closely. And then I'll say youth support. We talk about disconnected young people, and one of the major places we're anticipating cuts at the federal level is in supporting young people in their training pathways to careers, specifically through workforce funding. So we're keeping an eye on that, but we're doing okay. What I think is interesting and likely resonates with a lot of priorities that we see here in Pierce County through economic development is that from a policy standpoint at the federal levels, there's a really skills-forward mentality, which isn't much different from the last administration. An executive order just came down called Make America Skilled Again, and it is all about investing in training for people through the workforce system. This includes a huge focus on apprenticeships, and not just traditional apprenticeships like we've seen in construction skilled trades, for example, but apprenticeships in things like behavioral health, which is something we are piloting through additional county funding to support through our local workforce system. We have the first ever behavioral health apprentices here in Pierce County because the traditional pathway to train into these jobs is often not accessible to everyone. So huge focus on kind of skills forward, huge focus on apprenticeships. And then the other thing we're paying attention to that I know you all are too is just the federal and other layoffs that are increasing. So we anticipate, and we heard this in DC also with the data, there's a bit of a delayed impact on unemployment, and so we'll probably see that increase. But from an anecdotal perspective, what we're seeing in quote unquote white collar jobs in Pierce County, at the city, at the county, in policy and strategy and those kinds of jobs is much higher competition. So I don't know if you're noticing this at the county, but applications that are rolling in higher in volume and higher in competition for some of those jobs. And that's currently anecdotal, but we are certainly seeing it across our employers here. The numbers in our workforce centers have tripled over the last year. And these are job seekers coming through the door saying, I've lost my job, or I'm concerned about losing my job. What are my options? What is different now than 5 years ago or 10 years ago, or what's typical for our local workforce system, is that it's often people coming in who want to upskill. They want to grow their skills. They want to get into higher wage jobs. And we are set up really well to support community members to do that. Now we're seeing these highly skilled working professionals coming in who have a brilliant set of skills that just might not be transferable. A really good example, Councilmember Denson, I believe you said to me recently, what about law enforcement? Like, we have all these federal employees. How could we transition them into some of our really, really good law enforcement jobs or other jobs at the county or city? And it's a different mentality, different population to think about highly skilled professionals transitioning than our typical approach of upskilling folks into high-wage jobs. And so there's some exciting strategy we're partnering with the state on around that, and hopefully we will see more rapid pathways into reskilling, and we are really focusing on filling some of those high-demand jobs with federal and other highly skilled workers that we're seeing come into our centers. But the numbers have tripled, and so that tells a pretty compelling story. That's a bit about the landscape. If you'll go back one slide, I'll talk about some bright spots, and I will start with this county internship program. This is funding that you all have supported Workforce Central with, and we have chosen in kind of co-design with your economic development team to focus on disconnected young people. Many of our high schools, many of our colleges have really incredible internship programs. That is not this. This is about getting young people into good wage jobs who aren't connected to education or training. And so we're right in the middle of it. You'll receive a very fancy, exciting report with average wages, et cetera, when the program ends this fall. But right now we've served 122 young adults in this recent iteration, and I want to share two things with you, well, a couple things with you. Over 60% of those are outside of the city of Tacoma. This is county-wide. 75% of those young adults identify as a person of color, 58% are female. The most important and incredible, I can't believe it, data point that I have to share with you is that 78% of disconnected young people who go through this program are hired on by that employer or are placed in a job immediately completing the internship. If 78 does not sound high to you, I will tell you that that number is typically 30 to 50% for a general internship program. We are blown away by this. This is putting young people to work across industries too, an average wage, $25 an hour jobs in priority sectors, in businesses, and over 70 businesses so far across the county. And we'll have a kind of a heat map that I can share with you, but we've got businesses out in Graham and over on the peninsula. And so this is really, in its design, a reciprocal business job seeker support mechanism that doesn't exist for disconnected young people outside of this county investment. So much more to come in terms of outcomes on that when we wrap it up in the fall, but it matters. So just wanted to make sure that you all were aware that that investment is having a huge impact. So thank you. I'll also share just some other bright spots. We've doubled our pre-apprenticeship capacity in Pierce County in the last 3 years, and that's pre-apprenticeships for construction skilled trades, for advanced manufacturing and aerospace. These are short-term training pathways that are earn and learn, so young people and adults enter into a 12-week pre-apprenticeship program. They're earning an income while they're learning, and they come out job ready or apprenticeship ready with really high placement rates into those industries in the region. Those slots just weren't here before, and those are partnerships with programs like Palmer Pathways, Palmer Scholars, AJAC Advanced Manufacturing, et cetera, that kind of existed in King County or were smaller that we're growing here at home or bringing into the region. So apprenticeship capacity doubling in the last 3 years is a really big deal. Our data is really clear that, not surprisingly, workforce systems, and this isn't just WorkSource, but training programs through our community and technical colleges, et cetera, are not serving everyone in Pierce County, are not as accessible to our rural East Pierce County residents as they are in other areas. And so we are expanding WorkSource services. We did a pilot at the South Hill Mall, realized that we doubled the amount in a year of residents that we weren't reaching before, and so we're looking for a permanent location out there now for WorkSource in a way that it just hasn't existed before. The East Side Training Center has opened up. It is the east side of Tacoma and Pierce County is a training desert, so out on McKinley, Clover Park is renting that facility, looking to purchase, but that is not just going to be Clover Park Technical College training. It's going to host pre-apprenticeship training. It's going to host Bates Technical College training. Tacoma Community House was just talking about bringing a CNA training program there with priority on complete wraparound for East Pierce County residents. So that is a really exciting development, coupled with the state just invested $5 million in the child care center for workers at the old Willard Elementary School in Pierce County. So a lot of expansion into places with services that just didn't exist before for people we weren't meeting. And that's really important. And that's that. I'll stop there and make time for questions because there's so much we could share. This partnership with the county has been critical. I say every year, but we consider ourselves the arm of workforce development to support the vision of this council. We exist through an interlocal agreement between the city of Tacoma and Pierce County, and are governed by a board of 4 elected officials, 2 from the county and 2 from the city. And thank you, Councilmember Ayala, for joining that board. Really appreciate the partnership. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. That was a lot. So thank you for that. Do you want to open it up to committee members for questions? Committee member Herrera.
There it goes. All right. Thank you. I really appreciate the state of the workforce pamphlet that you had, that you gave out to us. A lot of great information on that. I guess the question on when you compiled that, what were the data sources you used to compile that report? I'm sure there's a lot, but I mean,
Yeah,
you probably really dig deep.
Not just publicly accessible data. We do actually purchase access to kind of, our research team calls it like 2-layer below labor market data. And so I'm happy to send you those sources. I believe they are also listed in the back of the report, but we use Loads, ACS, some publicly available data, but we do have access, which is how we created your district dashboards, into kind of 2-layer below data that's not publicly accessible.
Appreciate that. Yeah. And you talked about some of the future needs, and I might have missed it, but what have you been preparing to, or how is workforce preparing for the future needs in the workforce?
One of the strongest investments that we are making is in short-term earn and learn opportunities for young adults and adults who are kind of reskilling or upskilling in quality jobs. And so by that, what I mean is those pre-apprenticeship programs, is those kind of 6 to 12 week industry recognized certified programs that get people into higher wage jobs more quickly. That is one of the most significant investments we're making, and we're actually hearing at the federal level that they are going to double down on that model as well, because adults don't have time to take 2 years off of work or 3 years off of work and go earn a certification. So that's a top priority for us.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Chair, Vice Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to Chair Morrell.
Thank you, Vice Chair. It was enjoyable having you on the trip. I appreciate your probing questions to our panels and our Congress members. I guess, when we kind of engage in workforce development, we all know that college isn't for everyone. And trying to get intervention in early within the education system, and statistically, we know at-risk kids are, if they don't figure a path forward, are always going to be low-skill labor. How do we engage with our school districts to find pathway forward for kids that are, that are on, whether it's free lunch programs or, you name it out there. Is there any way to start intervention early on within the education system?
Yeah, that is a critical question. I think so. What happened is we were, as an education system in the country, pretty career and technical ed focused in the 80s and in the early 90s, and we shifted pretty dramatically into a college for all mentality, which is a bit of what you're talking about. We saw a lot of those programs go away, and we learned that that was to the detriment of many of our students. And so to your point, in the last decade, we've seen a wave of whoops, like reinvestment in career and technical education. I'm thrilled to share that at the state level, that was a funding priority for the legislature and the governor, and is continuing forward with strong investments in career and technical education. And so what seems to be happening is a recognition that we need to invest more in those pathways because the data played out. More options for students means more students are going to get in a good earning wage job. So I would say investments in and working with our school districts to prioritize career and technical education has been happening over the last decade, and I think is slowly saturating our systems in a way that it wasn't before. And then one of the things that happens and is really clear in the data is our K-12 system is charged with and funded to get students to the finish line. And our higher education system or training providers are charged with and funded to get students in seats. And that summer, between the time that happens, is where we lose so many young people. The state of Washington is unique in many ways, and one of those is that our agencies at the state level we have a decentralized agency system in the state of Washington, which means our K-12 agency is separate from multiple higher ed agencies, making alignment and funding trickier for students to navigate a seamless pathway. So there's a lot of state advocacy happening around that. It's not true in every state. In a lot of states, those agencies are aligned, making it much more seamless for young people. So kind of state level, but also, you talk about engaging with local school districts. I think it's just clear that career and technical education pathways transform completion rates for school districts, and we're seeing more investment in that. So ideally, we continue in that trajectory. Things like the Pierce County Skills Center, things like the Maritime Skills Center that's being developed in Tacoma, that is where education systems are putting their money. And I think it's going to take a few years to see how that plays out, but early data is positive. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, I just want to make sure that you touched on that point because, in reflecting back, when I was coming up, I mean, I'll admit it, I wasn't academically the best student, but I worked really well with my hands. And whether it be wood shop that we used to have or metal shop, my instructors saw that in me and put me on a path towards vocational school where I was able, that was the early running start for the Tacoma school system, was you could enter into a vocational school in the 11th and go full-time in the 12th grade. And so by the time I graduated, I already had a job down at Coram Ford, and I was ready to, bang my knuckles for the next 40 years. But, there again, that was a passion of mine, and it wasn't in books. It was learning a skill set like that, but having instructors be able to identify that and steer you in that direction, So, obviously made an impact on me, but I appreciate what you do, the challenges that you have, because as you look at the statistical numbers and the data here, King County versus Pierce County versus even Thurston County, we're at the bottom of the barrel here. And how do we change an economy and a market in Pierce County? I mean, it's not going to happen overnight, but when you have King County being priced out, a lot of people being priced out and coming down to Pierce County, I see it in all my fringe areas that, housing is going through the roof because King County is coming down, selling their home in Issaquah and paying cash in Tooele, and then working from home. So, when I talk to individuals, people, especially in government, how do you change a market? How do you change blue collar to white collar? The dynamics of that are very complicated. So, not that I expect you to address that right now. We can sit down later and, and have an hour discussion. But thank you, Vice Chair, for the opportunity to ask questions.
Thank you so much for the questions and comments. Committee Member Yambe.
Thank you. This is more of a comment. Katie, it sounds like I'm going to have to meet up with you and pick your brain because I've got all these questions and ideas, and I appreciate the presentation, and the impending dashboards sound absolutely incredible. And thank you for being the resource that you are, and so appreciate you coming here.
All right. Thank you so much for the comment. Other comments or questions from committee members? Seeing none, I've got a couple, actually. First and foremost, thank you so much for remembering what happened last year to then bring that forward and personalize an entire component of this for each of our districts. I think that's going to be incredibly helpful. I may have a request of that potentially for next year or later around some data that's been out there around younger people being laid off at a faster rate these days than in previous generations. And there are some assumptions that can be made around how COVID impacted, someone's ability to have those skills to be successful in the workforce, or any other number of things. But I am curious what that looks like at each of our districts. The actual question I had was in terms of your internship opportunity, where you talked about a 78% hire by the host site. How do businesses find out about such a connection point?
Great question, and thanks for teeing me up for something I forgot to share as well. The reason this model is working is because we tested something new this year. So last year, then Executive Dan Meyer and Councilmember Campbell challenged us to think about a kind of public-private partnership for this internship model in a way where employers were investing. It's wonderful that the county funds wages, but if we can get employers invested, then they're more invested in a number of ways in these young people. So we shifted the model so that the employer is the employer of record, as opposed to us or a Goodwill or we still have this model available for employers who can't be the employer of record, but actually the employer hires a young person on and then gets reimbursed for a portion of the wages, and the employer typically has buy-in to that as well. So it's a cost share model that we're really hopeful, A, helps sustain the program long term, B, has private sector buy-in, but employers are invested in these young people in a way that they aren't quite as strongly when they kind of go through a program and get a young person but don't have to do any of the paperwork behind what hiring looks like. That doesn't directly answer your question, but the model has been revolutionary. We have a business solutions team who's out with dozens of employers every day. We do have priority sectors that align with the county's priority sectors. We work with economic development department at the county to identify priority businesses. It is really important to us that this is a county-wide and emphasized outside of the City of Tacoma program for young people who just don't have as much access, and also businesses who don't. And so we do direct outreach to cover priority sectors with an emphasis on small to medium-sized businesses as well. And our team is out there kind of doing that one-on-one recruitment with businesses, as well as referrals from the county and the EDB and the Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you so much. Very impressed by the partnership and thrilled to hear about it. With that, I see no more questions. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to hand this back to Chair Morrell. Very silly. Don't want to give this up too soon.
Your mic, and I'll deal with the rest.
That's right. Never mind.
For having me.
Okay. Well, thank you. Appreciate the presentation. It's always informative to have discussions, and your internship program that you helped one of my constituents with, I appreciate that. Now we have the final presentation, which is the Fox Island Bridge. I think Committee Member Denson's got this memorized, and and is well versed here. But we're going to have the location study briefing, and so I'll turn it over to Ms. Erica Red Hunt to do the introduction.
Okay, thank you so much. The Fox Island full replacement type, size, and location study went through a preliminary analysis in 2016, and on the basis of that analysis, a study was a full study, TSL, type, size, location study, was funded in 2022. So work on the study began in 2024, and here to give an update, we have our county engineer, Letitia Neal.
Thank you. Good morning, committee members. I'm happy to present to you on the Fox Island Bridge TSNL study update. We've been very busy working on this over the past year or so. We've had a consultant on board who's been evaluating a number of different options, and we've been meeting with the community on Fox Island. So I will summarize what we have accomplished to date and where we stand for you. Next slide. So I'll briefly go over the project timeline and how we reached to where we are today. The feedback we received at our open house, which was in August of 2024 when we started this particular endeavor. I'll go through very briefly the different options we've evaluated so far. We just completed an open house in April to share the results of that evaluation with the community, and I will let you know what we heard at that particular meeting, and then the next steps that we'll be going through, and of course, happy to answer any questions that you have. Next slide. The project timeline is quite extensive, and it would be for an endeavor of this nature. This is a very significant structure that impacts a lot of people and is in a very challenging environment, so it needs to be looked at very closely and carefully. Back in 2012, our bridge inspections found some areas of concern that really prompted this discussion. And we first looked at what are the big picture options out there. Can we rehabilitate it? Can we retrofit it? Would we need to do a full replacement? That took a few years to go through. We did conclude that a total replacement of the bridge was the best course forward long term. In 2017, in response to that idea, we also took a close look at the financing options that were out there, acknowledging that this would be a very expensive project to do, and how would Pierce County be able to fund something like this? Our preliminary results are online, posted on our website. They do need to be updated. That's something we'll be doing in the next few years, but the core information and the core message there remains the same, that there is no one funding source for a project of this size. It would need to be a combination of multiple funding sources. In 2022, the County Council budgeted for the full TSNL for a replacement bridge, which we have been working on. We had the kickoff open house in August of 2024, as I mentioned. And then just last month, we had our follow-up open house to share the evaluations. Late this year, we hope to finalize our TSNL with recommended options to carry forward. Next slide. So back in August, during our kickoff meeting, we spent a lot of time listening to the public. We had a number of We held our open house at Artendale Elementary and had approximately 100 people attend in person and received 231 responses online and in. A lot of data received from the community at that event. From those responses and our interactions, we heard loud and clear that a cost-effective solution is extremely important to everyone on the island, and it's important to us as well. We want to be very thoughtful about how we utilize Pierce County's resources. There was also a preference for a single-sided shared use path and a lot of support for those pedestrian accommodations, so we have included that in the potential design moving forward. There was also a lot of comments made about wanting to look at non-traditional options or some ideas other than just a bridge replacement. That was fine, so we added some additional options to our consultant's workload to evaluate. Next slide. We developed a purpose and need statement based on all those elements that we heard and what we know of the funding environment out there. And that is the guiding principle that we used when evaluating all the different options. So the options we evaluated included not doing anything, basically a no-build scenario. The rehabilitate and retrofit option, again, we made sure that was still on the table to be considered. We also looked at various different scenarios of replacement bridges, floating bridges as an option, tunnels underneath the sound, and putting back into place a ferry boat service for Fox Island. So some very creative ideas that were brought forward by the community. Next. In evaluating all of these options, we had several key criteria that needed to be addressed. Cost is always a significant factor, and when we were looking at cost, it was not just the cost of construction, but also the cost of maintaining over the 75-year life cycle of any structure or element that we would be constructing. We also looked at the number of properties likely to be impacted by this new structure or new infrastructure. Different engineering factors that may be involved, how difficult it would be to operate. When you start talking about things like a ferry service, you have operational costs. Tunnels have maintenance costs that are different from bridges. Environmental impacts are one of the very significant factors. We're in a maritime environment with a lot of sensitive areas on either side that need to be considered when we're looking at different options. The boat launch there underneath the existing structure, near the existing structure, is also of concern to a number of residents and also a concern to us because it may warrant special protection depending on how it's being used and how it was funded originally and who owns it currently. We also looked at traffic impacts during construction. This is the only way on and off the island. So we want to make sure that whatever option that we end up picking, we've taken into consideration how we would address people's needs to still get on and off the island, to go through their daily lives while construction is taking place. And finally, a lot of other risk factors were evaluated, including permitting, potential transportation of hazardous materials, and those types of things. Next. So after many months of evaluation and research and some preliminary design, we have dropped 4 of these options from the study. The rehab and retrofit remains not a good choice to move forward with, as does the floating bridge, the tunnel, and the ferry boat service. They were all dropped due to costs, the number of properties potentially being impacted, constructability issues, and environmental permitting concerns. Ultimately, what we move forward with, next slide, are 4 options. One is the no-build option. Although that is not what we know needs to happen, you have to have a no-build option for comparison purposes as you move through the environmental process. So that no-build will continue through our entire process to be able to compare back to. So really we have 3 options moving forward other than the no-build. One is to replace the existing structure with a 2,000-foot long structure on the east side of the existing bridge. Another is to do the same thing on the west side of the existing bridge. They both have different impacts associated with them. And a slightly longer structure further away from the existing bridge that would require a completely different alignment, but would allow full traffic flow during construction to occur. So there was definite positive benefits to having any replacement structure further away from the existing one. So these are the elements that we are recommending carrying forward with further study. Next. Now there's a lot of data here, but really what I want you to look at in big picture is the color. These are all the evaluation criteria we used and all of the options. The orange are unfavorable scores that would cause difficulties for that particular option. The blue is somewhat neutral, and the green is the most favorable score. So you can see at a glance why, for example, the tunnel options in the ferry service did not make the cut. They had a lot of evaluation elements that just were not favorable for the residents, the county, the environment, various other areas. And the elements that we are carrying forward are the ones that have the best overall criteria scoring. Next slide, please. So we brought all this information forward to the open house we just had last month. We had an extremely high number of attendees, almost 300 showed up for that. It was a packed house. A lot of really good questions, a lot of really interested people, very, very curious about what the county has been doing, how we reached these results, and also what we heard loud and clear is a lot of concern about how this is going to be funded. And I will say the same thing that I told so many residents at that open house. There have been no decisions on how something like this would be funded. We need to select the option first, whatever that final option is, and then really explore the available funding that is out there. We'll update the financial research that was done a number of years ago, and then evaluate the best way to move forward. But there have been no decisions made on how something like this is going to be funded. We're also taking a little bit of time right now to go through all of the comments that we received. There's a lot of interest and comments on different options, different elements of different options. We want to make sure we really understand all of those issues and concerns that we heard at the open house. Next. So our timeline from here, we are going to wrap up the TS&L at the end of this year, and then next year, starting right after the first of the year, we're going to advance preliminary design on those final few options and begin the environmental permitting process, which is really going to help us clarify and solidify which option is the one to move forward with. Permitting is a big factor in this particular project. And so whatever element, whatever option we choose needs to be fully permittable and constructible moving forward. We anticipate that that effort will probably take 2 years to get through the environmental assessment process. During that time, we will, of course, be pursuing funding for each step of the way and looking at the big picture funding. Ideally, in 28, 29, we could start acquiring properties and looking at final design elements with a potential construction date of 2030, but all of this is dependent on funding, of course. If we don't have the funding to take the next step, well, obviously the schedule gets pushed out. But this is the most realistic path forward that we could put together that takes into account all the different steps necessary to have a construction-ready project and to move forward with building a replacement structure. Next slide. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions for you. I've brought Craig Shaner, our field engineering manager, who is much more the expert on structures than I am, in case you really get into the weeds and ask some technical questions, but we're happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of committee members? Committee member Herrera.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for all this information. I did look a little bit over the website, a lot of good information there. What were, I think the bridge was built in 1954.
Yes.
By the Washington Toll Bridge Authority at that.
Yes.
Is there any examples of how they funded it then? Because I think there was only 120 houses on that island when they built that in 1954. I mean, they probably figured out a way then. I'm sure tolling was part of it.
I mean, the tolling was part of it, but the tolling didn't continue for very long. It proved to be very costly to actually get the tolling, and so they weren't, that wasn't the entire cost, definitely. The bridge at that time, believe it or not, only cost $1.5 million to construct. It's so different today, what the cost of something like this will be. So I don't know what the finances were when they constructed. Do you, Craig?
No, not specifically.
Yeah.
I just know that it wasn't, they never retired. They retired the funding, rather, it never paid. So.
Yeah.
So to your point.
Got it.
The tolls did not fund it.
Just for clarification, if you're going to make a comment, you got to approach the podium. So,
sorry. Yeah. So, and in this study, I was a little surprised at how much it would cost to do the ferry service. Really surprised. You can still see the old ferry dock. on Fox Island that was servicing it for many years. And is it mostly the permitting part or just the acquisition of somebody's property?
For the ferry
For the
service
ferry
specifically?
stuff, yes.
No, that we would have to, of course, acquire vessels. We would need to.
We have vessels.
We have vessels, absolutely. But we have vessels that aren't intended to hit another site and carry the amount of traffic that you're looking at off of Fox Island. One of the big concerns with the ferry system was the delays. Right now, residents are used to being able to drive across the bridge in a matter of minutes, and they would be looking at, depending on where the other terminal was, looking at delays of anywhere from half an hour to 2 hours for that ride. It would only be at certain times during the day. We would need to rehabilitate and bring up to standards any infrastructure that's currently there, and potentially create completely new infrastructure. So it just didn't pan out for a number of reasons.
Okay, thank you. Chair.
Thank you for those questions. Any other questions? Okay, not seeing any, then I will add a few questions.
Okay.
Since you've been so patient to wait through all the presentations. In committee member Denson's not here, so I could fire away. Wouldn't it be better if we just declared somewhat of an emergency and paid off all those 120 residents and bought their homes?
Today or back in 1950 something?
Now.
Now? It's a bit
I mean,
more
you
than
could pay
120.
almost $2 million to each resident and not have to build a bridge. I'm just saying.
There are a number
I'm
of
just
reasons why that's
saying
not a good option.
we do it all the time in my district when we're doing setbacks from rivers.
Mm-hmm.
The county goes in there and buys up homes that have been built 30 years ago, nice homes even. So I'm just curious to see if, I mean, obviously that wouldn't go over very well with the public, but the analogy of at what point do you say, how in the heck are we going to pay for this?
Right. That's certainly the question. It's a piece of infrastructure that is well beyond any of the other bridges in our inventory in terms of length, being in that marine environment, the potential cost of replacement. And it wasn't originally a Pierce County structure either. It's something we inherited from the state. So it's a little bit of a unicorn in our inventory, and it is a puzzle how to handle that. We do have a responsibility to continue to provide a public transportation service to residents. If the council really wants to pursue buying out an entire island and relocating all those individuals, it would be a costly endeavor as well. I don't know that you would save a lot of money. It's interesting you bring that up.
Yeah, and obviously I don't just say that off the cuff because I'm dealing with that up on the Fairfax Bridge.
Yes.
Only 40 residents, but the cost to replace that bridge is going to be $300 million.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, there's a reality check here and how we deal with that. But, you know, I get the fact that we've inherited this. Is there any federal government activity on the island anymore?
The only location there may be some is associated with the boat launch. It is a little bit of a conundrum. We're still doing a lot of research on that as to who originally paid for it, who's invested any maintenance in it, is it BLM, is it DNR? So that's a question mark that we're exploring. I hope to have some results from that research at the at Councilmember Denson's in-district meeting next month, be able to elaborate a bit more on what the boat launch really is going to entail to deal with as part of the project. But that's the only area that we're tracking on in terms of federal interest out there.
Okay. Councilmember Herrera, myself, and Councilmember Krueger, which was back in D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we were one of the lobby efforts was for bridges. And they say, welcome to the club. With bridges, it just seems like they're a never-ending preservation, maintenance item, especially when you're dealing with a saltwater element. I understand that. I mean, you have narrowed it down to replacement options,
Yes, sir.
which, you know, is appropriate. Have you really, beyond the public comments, one of the concerns that I have is looking at your model that you have, which is 2 lanes and then a pedestrian walkway. Why does that walkway have to be so wide?
It is a shared use path, the idea being that it would incorporate bicyclists as well. And it is an element that not only has support of a good amount of people on the island, but would also be a requirement for a number of funding opportunities out there. And we wanted to keep all of those avenues open. If we were to try to build a structure that did not accommodate multimodal users, we would essentially lock ourselves out of any number of grant competitions just from that fact alone. So we definitely wanted to have an element like that, and our first open house in August last year, we showed the residents a couple of different options of having a more traditional sidewalk on each side versus this wider shared use facility on one side with a barrier. And the public definitely was in favor of the shared use path on one side. So in terms of cost of the structure, it really didn't matter. It's not making that big of a difference whether it's a smaller sidewalk on both sides or all on one side. But we need to have some version of a multimodal facility there to be eligible for grant funding.
Yeah, and this is one of the challenges that we run into, both suburban and rural areas of the county, is we have to make them to urban standards, because I can guarantee you there's no sidewalks on the island and there's no sidewalks off the island. So you have this beautiful bridge with a pedestrian multimodal going to nowhere. So, you know, going, okay. Okay, I won't harp on that. But, you know, obviously, you know, my fellow council members will be having to deal with this because I will be sailing my boat around Fox Island. You know, it will be a challenge. I mean, there's 2 bridges, and you're totally aware of the Milroy Bridge and Fox Island that county has no way of paying for. So especially, I'm going to get up on my soapbox because I'm sitting next to District 5, is without that northerly extension, that's one heck of an expensive bridge to just go across a river. So if you don't have that river, that freight corridor coming off Canyon, that's a tough sell. So I'm not telling you anything that you don't know, but, you know, trying to jab my council member in the ribs on the District 5, the importance of that one. I think that one is an easier solution with that connection than the Fox Island Bridge. But anyway, I appreciate your time, your energy. I appreciate your community outreach. It's not easy to appease everyone. I'll be looking at how we do transportation benefit districts in the area, and that will be an interesting conversation to have. And I assume you've done the numbers on what those residents pay into the road fund, and
Yes,
that
sir.
argument that, oh, we pay into it, but not to the tune of $300 million. So anyway, that's a conversation we have with our island people too. And Lord knows I don't want another ferry in Pierce County. So anyway, with that, is there any other questions, comments? I think I've said enough. Okay, good thing Councilmember Denson's not here. So with that, I think that ends the presentation. Thank you for your patience, your time. Ms. Erica Red Hot, is there anything else that we need to know?
Okay, a couple of items. So the Pierce County Code requires that the Spanaway Lake Management District Citizens Advisory Board send a report to the council by June 15th each year. They have done so, but I'm going to include that material in the meeting that we have planned for August, where we're going to discuss the Spanaway Lake Management District. So just to know that that requirement's been met. For the next meeting, it's going to be on May 27th, right after the Memorial Day holiday. There'll be a compressed schedule that day to accommodate Monday and Tuesday regular sets of meetings. So it'll be a little shorter EIDC. We've got the fish barrier removal program update by Planning Public Works, surface water management, safe routes to schools plan update by the Office of the County Engineer. And then under other business, we will have Tanya Carter here, the City of Tacoma Economic Development Director. That position was vacant when we had our big County Economic Development Coordination meeting, and so we wanted the ability for Ms. Carter to come in and meet the committee and talk a little bit about the economic development program in Tacoma. So looking forward to that at our next meeting.
Great, thank you. And just a little bit of useless trivia, and I forgot to bring it up when we were talking to the art director, that we actually have someone in the council office that won the box wrap, and they have a box wrapped in Graham. So, and they opened it up to county employees last year before it was closed. So anyway, so it's your job to figure out who that is. So anyway, with that, I appreciate your time on this committee. I know we went a little bit over, but thanks for your patience. Adjourned.